What happens when you're a global icon and a super humanitarian? You go on a regular interview and you've stumbled into a live televised assassination attempt. Well, you're about to watch a masterclass in composure. Angelina Jolie thought she was coming on The View to promote her latest film and maybe touch base on her refugee work. She's about to end up having her character dissected on live television by a host hell-bent on dismantling her image. This is not your everyday celebrity chat. This is a cutthroat game of wit that will have you reevaluating your perspective on the integrity of our media. Stay tuned. The tension in the room is building until it's about to reach breaking point. There was a certain heaviness to the View studios on this particular Tuesday morning. Unlike the typically loud and electric pre-show chatter, the studio was eerily quiet, almost hushed. At the center of it all was Joy Behar. From her usual seat at the round table, the veteran television personality furiously rifled through a stack of papers in front of her, her eyes betraying not just a hint of preparation, but also a palpable sense of intent. 5 minutes. We have the Academy Award-winning actress, Angelina Jolie, joining us today to discuss her latest film and her humanitarian work with refugees, came the producer's voice through their earpieces. Whoopi Goldberg, noticing Joy's unusual stiffness, nudged her playfully. "You good, Joy? You're a little tense." "I'm perfectly fine, Whoopi, just very, very prepared," Joy replied, without looking up. But what was she so prepared for? As the familiar theme song blared, the cameras cut live. Whoopi gave her usual effervescent intro. "Please welcome our next guest, the one and only, Academy Award-winning actress and director Angelina Jolie." The audience went wild. Angelina walked onto the set with her characteristic grace, looking impeccably poised in a sleek black blazer. Her eyes scanned the table, and she offered a warm, genuine smile as she made her way to her seat. "Thank you so much for joining us today, Angelina. We are so happy to have you here," Whoopi said. Angelina nodded, her voice soft and steady. "It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me." It seemed like just another ordinary Tuesday morning. Sarah Haynes asked Angelina about her new film, and Sunny Hostin transitioned to the heartbreaking journey Angelina recently took to visit refugee camps in Jordan. Angelina spoke passionately, her eyes shining as she described the strength of the families she'd met. The interview felt as natural as can be until you catch a glimpse at the end of the table. Joy Behar hadn't moved a muscle in minutes. She wasn't smiling or nodding. She was just waiting. Then, suddenly, the air in the studio shifted dramatically. "You know, Angelina," Joy began. Her voice had a cold, sharp edge to it that cut through the warm, inviting atmosphere. "There is something that has been on my mind that I need to get off my chest." A palpable silence fell over the room. The audience held their breath, realizing that this was no longer a routine celebrity interview, but a full-on character assassination live on national television. Angelina slowly turned her head to meet Joy's gaze. Her face was a mask of calm composure, but her eyes were sharp and alert. The honeymoon phase of the interview was officially over. And the million-dollar question: what was written in that pile of notes Joy was clinging to so tightly? "Of course, Joy. What would you like to know?" Angelina's tone was civil, yet the air in the studio immediately turned frosty. Joy leaned in, eyes narrowed, as if preparing to strike a viper, and stated her questions. "Well, the interesting thing here is, you have presented yourself as a great humanitarian, traveled the world, adopted children from every continent, but I'm a little curious as to if this all seems to you, well, just a tiny bit, how do I put it, colonial." This hit the studio like a truck, the audible intake of breath from the audience palpable. The faces of the other hosts paled, and for just one fraction of a second, Angelina's eyes widened in surprise. It looked like even she hadn't seen that blow coming. However, if Joy had been expecting tears to spill, she was disappointed. "I'm sorry, would you mind clarifying what you mean by colonial?" Angelina asked, her tone flat and even, but with a hint of ice. Joy smirked. She had what she wanted, and now she was going for the jugular. "Well, a wealthy white woman from Hollywood coming over to the third world countries, whisking away the children and then filming stories about the trials and tribulation these children are enduring. This all feels to me like a white savior complex to you, doesn't it?" A beat of absolute silence filled the studio. The cameras themselves looked frozen in their tracks. On the view table, usually teeming with crosstalk, a vacuum of silence was forming. Whoopi Goldberg shuffled uncomfortably, and a wave of stunned shock appeared on everyone's faces. This wasn't a debate. This was character assassination. Angelina took a deep breath, her hands folded delicately in her lap. Joy, I can understand that my actions have been perceived in different ways. And honestly, I'm open to a very nuanced conversation on the system of aid and humanitarian work in the world. But I believe that you are painting both me and my motivations into a corner you want to perceive. Am I? Am I really? Joy shot back, her aggression building as she took in the stunned look on the audience's faces. Because, let's call it what it is, you've built a whole second career on the backs of people's misfortunes and struggles, and I'm not even going to begin about the way you have publicized your adoptions. The faces of the other hosts were mortified. Sarah Haynes tried to interrupt. Joy, maybe we should… No, Sarah, I want to finish this, Joy barked, her gaze fixed firmly on Angelina's. The audience has to hear this. We spend every single day on this show talking about white privilege and responsibility, and I believe right in front of our faces sits the perfect example. Angelina remained calm, but her eyes had started to gleam. Joy, for nearly 20 years I've devoted myself to causes that are very close to my heart, while working with a multitude of organizations and the UN. If you wish to discuss in depth the inherent issues of aid work around the world, I am absolutely more than willing. Oh, how generous and selfless, Joy sneered with an acid-like drip. But let's be honest, Angelina, exactly how much of what you do is truly for charity, and how much is for your own self-congratulatory feel-good purposes that somehow are always broadcast alongside your photo shoots and press releases. The tension in the air was almost overwhelming. We have all watched Celebrity Rose before, but never have we watched anyone defend their soul as gracefully and yet aggressively. How can one of the most famous women in the world react to having her family and her very essence attacked live on national television? The answer you will hear Angelina give will surprise you. Finally, Whoopi's voice emerged. Joy, I think… Actually, Whoopi let me handle this, Angelina said, cutting her off. Her tone remained incredibly calm, though the air had chilled to an Arctic degree. Joy, you are entitled to your opinion. You are not entitled to twist my words. The majority of my work for humanitarian aid occurs behind closed doors with no cameras, no press, and no fanfare. The trips that are televised are public in nature and are designed to bring attention to crises, which have been largely ignored by the media and you. Joy leaned back smugly with that silly, I knew it look on her face. So, what you're saying is you do use this for publicity then? I am saying I use my platform to highlight suffering, Angelina said. If that makes you uncomfortable, you should ask yourself why you're so uncomfortable by drawing attention to suffering. She delivered that comeback like a surgeon's scalpel. For a fraction of a second, the self-satisfied look on Joy's face wavered, but her heart was already closed to such arguments. She wasn't looking for a conversation. She was looking for a knockout blow. Don't you dare turn this on me, Joy screeched, her voice reaching a fever pitch. I am not the one jet-setting around the globe with cameras in tow collecting children like accessories. The audience in the studio let out a collective gasp. The other hosts visibly flinched from the cruelty in Joy's voice. For the first time, a crack appeared in Angelina's composure. Her jaw was set, and her whole body was tensing. Joy, what you have said is not only offensive to me, Angelina stated, her voice lowered to a dangerous rumble. It is offensive to my children, who are at this very moment watching me be attacked on national television. Maybe they should know who you really are then, Joy shouted, without missing a beat. Maybe they should realize that you adopted them as a publicity move. Those words hung in the air like poison. Is there anything Joy Behar won't cross to win? She literally turned a celebrity interview into a direct attack on someone's family. For the first time since the interview started, Angelina's mask fell away. There was a flash in her eyes, of hurt and rage that made every person in the studio hold their breath. Excuse me? Angelina whispered. Did you just suggest that I adopted my children for publicity? Seizing on Angelina's shock, Joy intensified her attack. That is exactly what I'm saying, Angelina. The timing just seemed awfully coincidental, didn't it? You were at rock bottom career-wise following the Brad Pitt situation, and all of a sudden here's Saint Angelina the orphan saver. Joy, that is quite enough, Whoopi insisted as she tried to take back control of her show. No, Whoopi, Angelina said, holding up a hand to silence her, never taking her eyes off of Joy. Please let her continue. I want to hear exactly what Joy Behar has to say about my family. Joy leaned forward, savoring the moment. Look, I'm not saying you don't love those children now, but be realistic. You were the other woman who broke up the world's favorite couple. You needed to fix your image. What's better than that than becoming Mother Teresa? A deafening silence fell over the studio. The cameramen themselves froze, unsure where to point. In a single statement, Joy had brought up the ghost of Angelina's past and used her own children as ammunition. The tension was palpable, and the world watched. How do you respond when someone tells you that your motherhood is a publicity stunt? Angelina Jolie was about to answer that in a way no one would ever forget. Sarah Haynes actually looked like she wanted to physically melt into the upholstery of her chair. The room was so thick you could practically cut it with a knife, only that the knife was made of pure electricity. Slowly, deliberately, and terrifyingly, Angelina stood. Each motion was precise, like a viper calculating its strike. Joy, Angelina began, her voice low but dangerous. I have sat here and listened to you lambaste my work, my motives, and my character, all with decorum. Because in your world, ratings, money, it's all dependent on making controversy, and you thrive in that kind of environment. But the second that you involve my children, the second you suggest that they were anything less than completely wanted and loved, you have crossed a line that I will not let you cross. Oh, please, Joy scoffed, waving her hand like she was swatting a fly away. Save it, darling. I don't want to hear your righteous mother speech. Everyone knows the real story. Everyone knows what, Joy? Angelina's voice was now colder than a glacier. That I've provided loving homes for children who needed them? That I've dedicated my life to helping others beyond the limits of self-interest? Or is it that you've taken a tabloid fabrication and mistaken it for truth, as I assume the majority of us usually have? Joy's face flushed, but now was not the time to be bashful. I'm talking about facts, Angelina. Conveniently orchestrated photo ops and a highly manufactured charity persona that you've been monetizing off of for the last 5 years. Monetized? Angelina asked. For the first time, her voice began to escalate. It filled the room with a controlled fury that seemed capable of tearing down the studio. Joy, I have personally donated millions of dollars of my own money to humanitarian causes around the world. I receive literally $1 as my salary for my work with the United Nations. So please, by all means, tell me how you, a highly paid journalist, have so effectively monetized helping refugees escape war-torn countries. The audience erupted. You could feel the ground shift beneath Joy's feet as they clearly began to sympathize with Angelina. To regain control of the floor, she launched her final attack. You know what I really think, Angelina? I think you are a narcissist so obsessed with your image, you've mistaken your own egos for causes you are fighting for. I think you collect countries and causes and children like trophies. And frankly, it's time someone stood up and said something. The studio blew up. Gasps were actually heard over the mics. Whoopi's mouth was in her lap, and Sarah actually buried her face in her hands. You'd expect Angelina to start yelling, screaming, maybe even storming off stage. But she did none of the above. Instead, she smiled. It wasn't a real smile, it was a grandmaster who just saw checkmate. Joy, she said calmly, retaking her seat as if nothing had happened. I thank you for this conversation. You have demonstrated something beautifully. Joy looked baffled. What are you talking about? You have shown everyone watching exactly what is wrong with media in America today, Angelina stated, her voice growing in strength and resonant power. You have taken a platform that could be used to inform people of the struggles faced by so many around the world. And instead, you have elected to engage in a personal attack fueled by your own desperate hunger for relevancy and a reliance on gutter journalism, tabloids, and gossip. Joy's smug expression cracked like a fragile pane of glass. I am asking perfectly reasonable questions. No, Joy, you aren't, Angelina countered firmly. You are making accusations without facts. You are insulting a guest, and you have stooped to using children as ammunition in a battle for your own validation. There is nothing reasonable about any of that. The tables had clearly turned, the ambush turned around, the hunter now the hunted. Whoopi, recognizing the segment going to hell in a handbasket, finally stepped in. Ladies, perhaps we should... Was it too late to salvage the show, let alone Joy's career? Actually, Whoopi, I do want to address one more thing Joy brought up, Angelina continued with a cool, rhythmic authority. She referred to my life's work as a PR stunt. So, Joy, I have to ask you, when was the last time you stepped out of this studio and did something charitable? When was the last time you utilized this massive platform of yours for something other than gossiping or complaining about minor things? Joy turned deep red, a visible flush staining her cheeks. That's not the same. I'm a comedian. I'm a talk show host. Precisely, Angelina said with the sound of a gavel. You're a talk show host. You're supposed to stimulate intelligent conversation. You're supposed to have interesting, meaningful discourse, not to trap your guests in a hostile ambush with personal questions and judgments. And yet here you are, using your authority to bully someone and calling it a journalistic interview. I'm not bullying anyone, Joy protested, but the fire left her voice and she spoke in a thin, defensive tone. Angelina arched her eyebrows in utter disbelief. Really? You implied my children were adopted for publicity. You insinuated that my philanthropic work is a hoax. You labeled me a narcissist. If that's not bullying, Joy, then what exactly do you call it? The entire room changed, the audience clearly muttering in support of the woman in the black blazer. Recognizing she was losing her hold on the show, Joy resorted to a final, futile outburst. Look, Angelina, if you can't handle questions, then you shouldn't be doing interviews. Questions? Angelina repeated, an amused look flitting across her face. Joy, a difficult question would be about the logistics and complexities of international adoptions, or about humanitarian efforts in poverty-ridden nations, or about balancing a demanding career and the mothering of children. What you're doing, Joy, is not a difficult question. It's a personal attack built on false information and assumption. It's not assumption, Joy asserted, her voice now a faint whisper. Isn't it? Angelina leaned closer, her intense gaze meeting Joy's. You've said I adopted my children for public relations. Joy, can you provide a shred of evidence for that? Do you have any legal documents, any sources, any information at all other than what you believe to be true? Joy opened her mouth and closed it again, scanning the table and finding no sympathetic eyes, but instead only her fellow co-hosts, who were suddenly absorbed in their notepads. The silence filled the room. I thought so, Angelina continued in the same cool tone of certainty. You've stated that I'm monetizing humanitarian work. Again, Joy, can you produce financial statements, evidence that I've profited personally? Anything that can be used as supporting evidence? Or are you speaking from your own emotions? Once again, Joy was silent. The Queen of Mean had met her match. The woman had defended herself with only facts and truths. Cameras were rolling. This was no longer an interview, it was a judgment. Joy, Angelina said, her voice now colored with a deep disappointment that cut sharper than rage ever could. You've spent the last 10 minutes tearing down a guest based solely on your feelings and some cheap gossip from the tabloids. Is that really the kind of journalism you want to be known for? The question hung heavy, like a lead weight in the air. Joy's unease was palpable, visible to every pair of eyes watching the broadcast. The bold confidence she'd exuded earlier had entirely dissolved. Moreover, Angelina continued, you've done this on national television, while the cameras are rolling, while knowing that my children might be watching. You've used this platform to bring a person down instead of lifting anyone up. Is this really the legacy you want to leave behind? The studio went silent. Even the producers in the back hesitated for a split second, unsure whether to cut to black or leave the feed rolling. But Joy Behar was not one to back down. As the walls felt as though they were closing in, her face took on a jagged edge of pure desperation. You know what, Angelina? Joy spit back, her voice cracking with a mixture of rage and sheer panic. You can sit there and have your self-righteous attitude all you want, but I know exactly who you are. Hollywood knows who you really are. Whoopi's eyes widened with actual concern. Joy, don't. No, Whoopi, I'm done. I'm done pretending, Joy shrieked, turning back to face Angelina with renewed, venomous fire. You want to talk about legacy? Let's talk about your legacy. Let's talk about seducing a married man. Let's talk about ruining Jennifer Aniston's marriage. A collective gasp swept through the room. This wasn't a talk show anymore, it was a televised character assassination unfolding live. Angelina's face didn't flinch, but her voice lowered, becoming dangerously quiet. Joy, I think you should stop talking now. Why? Because the truth hurts? Joy's voice was completely unraveling, her professionalism vanishing completely. You've spent years rewriting history, portraying yourself as some kind of humanitarian saint and victim, but you're nothing more than a homewrecker who got really good at spin. Joy, Whoopi shouted, jumping out of her seat so hard that it scraped loudly across the floor. That's enough. We're going to a commercial break. But Joy was far from finished. She turned directly to the camera, addressing millions of viewers at home. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are witnessing right now is the look of privilege. This is what happens when someone with money and power can't stomach the fact that they've been called out for their behavior. Angelina rose slowly. Her movements were measured, carrying the terrifying gravitas of someone who had negotiated with warlords. Her voice, when it came, was cold enough to freeze the air in the room. Joy, in the past 20 minutes, you have accused me of child exploitation, of fraudulent humanitarian work, and of destroying a marriage. You have done so without any evidence, any journalistic integrity, and with no regard whatsoever for the impact of your words. The impact? Joy laughed, a dry, hollow sound. What are you going to do? Sue me? Have your lawyers silence me? No, Joy, Angelina said, her calmness more chilling than any threat. I'm going to allow you to destroy yourself, which, of course, is exactly what you're doing right now. Joy's face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury that had long since transcended reason. She was no longer in control. She was spiraling into self-destruction right before the eyes of the world. You think you're better than everyone else, don't you? Your money and your title as a UN Goodwill Ambassador make you untouchable. But as the screen abruptly cut to a jarring commercial break, the burning question lingered in the minds of millions. Had Joy Behar just ended her career in a misguided attempt to destroy Angelina's? I think, Angelina said, her voice lowered to a whisper that carried a great deal further than Joy's bellow, that I am speaking to someone who has completely abandoned any sense of professional conduct or basic human decency. Basic human decency? Joy shrieked, nearly turning the words into a literal scream. You completely destroyed a family. You stole another woman's husband and then have the audacity to strut around like you were some kind of saint. The studio was a complete frenzy. Audience members were on their feet, some murmuring, some pointing cameras. Production assistants were waving their hands wildly towards the director's booth. Whoopi was screaming for commercial. Center of the tempest, Angelina was eerily still. Joy, I have sat here and listened to you making accusation after accusation, Angelina said, her calmness serving as a mirror to Joy's instability. I have watched you completely abandon professionalism. I have seen you use this platform to engage in personal attacks, and now I have watched you have what appears to be a complete breakdown in front of millions. I am not having a breakdown, Joy screamed, moving erratically, proving Angelina's point with crystal clarity. Joy, take a look at the room around you, Angelina said, a touch of pity in her voice. Take a look at your co-workers, your audience, and what you have reduced this show to. For the first time since the attack started, Joy seemed to actually look. She saw Sarah Haynes looking mortified. She saw Sunny Hostin shaking her head, and she saw some of her audience members getting up to leave. The revelation, however, led not to an apology but to the final desperate act of defiance. You know what? I do not care, Joy yelled. Someone has to call you out for the fraud that you are. The fraud that I am, Angelina said slowly, letting the words hang in the air. Joy, children have starved and died in refugee camps while you have sat here and hurled accusations. Women have fled from abusive relationships and been denied shelter, and women could have been saved or aided by the platform that this show could provide if you cared to use it wisely rather than focus your attention on your personal vendetta. The words hit Joy like a punch to the gut. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound was audible. The fact of what she had done hit her. She had been wrong all along and realized it too late. Angelina gathered her purse and rose from her chair with an air of dignity. Joy, I hope when you watch this, you'll truly see the type of woman you are but not necessarily what I am. Where do you think you're going? Joy asked, her voice cracking. I am leaving, Angelina said calmly. I came here today to discuss my important work and my charities, but instead I was attacked personally for absolutely no reason. You can't just walk off, Joy protested, a desperate look on her face. Yes, I can, Angelina replied, facing Joy once more. And I am because, unlike you, I know when to walk away from a destructive conversation. Joy leaped out of her chair, pointing a shaking, accusatory finger toward the audience. Don't you dare walk away from me. I'm not done with you yet. Suddenly, an authority was added to a new, strong voice from offstage. Yes, Joy, you are done. The heads of everyone in the room snapped towards the wing of the stage when the executive producer stormed into the light, his face like stone. He was followed by 2 security guards. Ladies and gentlemen, Whoopi stammered, we're experiencing technical difficulties. We'll be right back after these messages. However, the show was still live. The cameras remained, watching the complete disintegration of the most iconic table in daytime TV. What is this? Joy demanded, her gaze switching back and forth between the producer and the guards. Joy, you need to come with us, the producer said, his voice leaving no room for argument. We have to talk. Now! I'm in the middle of an interview, Joy shrieked, clutching her notes to her chest as though they were a shield. No, Joy, the producer corrected. You're in the middle of a breakdown, and it stops now. Angelina watched the unfolding events with both sadness and quiet resolution. She looked over at Whoopi, who looked as though she might cry seeing the wreckage of her own show. Whoopi, I am so sorry that this has happened on your set, Angelina whispered. Angelina, I am the one who is sorry, Whoopi replied, her voice thick with emotion. This is not what The View stands for. This is not who we are. I know, Angelina replied graciously, patting Whoopi's arm. This is not a reflection on you. The audience can clearly see that this is a reflection of one person's choices. Meanwhile, the standoff at the end of the table was escalating. You can't do this to me, Joy yelled at the producer. I've been here for years. I have a contract. Your contract does not give you the right to ambush guests with personal attacks, the producer shot back. You've created a hostile work environment, tarnished the reputation of this show, and left us vulnerable to tremendous legal liability. Legal liability? For what? For allowing defamatory statements to be aired on live national television, the producer said coldly. You have made severe allegations without a shred of evidence. This is the definition of defamation. The color drained from Joy's face as the gravity of the situation finally hit her like a physical blow. The security guards will escort you to your dressing room to gather your belongings, the producer said. We'll discuss the details of your future with the network tomorrow, but that's all the airtime you'll have for today. You can't throw me off my own show, Joy wailed, her voice cracking. As it turns out, the producer said calmly, we can, and we are. The security guard stepped forward, and Joy made a last desperate attempt to salvage her position. Angelina, wait, please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was just trying to ask the tough questions. I was doing my job. Angelina looked at Joy with pure pity. Joy, your job was to interview me about my work, not to attack my family. Those were not tough questions. They were a personal vendetta dressed up as a news segment. Please, Joy pleaded, don't let them do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Joy, Angelina replied sadly. You did this to yourself. The security guards gently guided Joy Behar from the set. Her protest echoed until the sound was swallowed by the cavernous studio. The remaining hosts sat in shocked, hollow silence. As Angelina stood to gather her things, Sonny Hostin called out, Angelina, I hope you know that this doesn't reflect how we feel about you. I know, Angelina replied, her smile tinged with a hint of melancholy. And I hope your viewers see that this is exactly why we need to promote a more thoughtful and responsible media. The world is too complex for the kind of hate. Angelina Jolie walked from the set with her dignity intact, leaving a studio in utter disbelief behind. The View had just witnessed its most devastating episode yet, a brutal reminder of how quickly an empire can crumble when arrogance trumps ethics. Manufactured outrage may grab a headline, but poise under pressure ultimately wins the war.